Welcome to Flash Frights. You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast. Flash Frights. We have seen all the Psycho movies, I'm pretty sure, because I feel like we've talked about them in passing before. And I think we've always kind of held the opinion that all of the Psycho sequels are unexpectedly better than they seem to have any business having. And I say that with like the utmost compliment. I'm not expecting Psycho 2, 3, or 4 to be any good, but I was never disappointed in the first time and subsequent rewatching of any of the Psycho sequels, including Psycho 2.
It's 22 years later. Norman Bates is coming home. Psycho 2.
It's starting again.
Rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you.
23 years after the original, the sequel to Psycho 2.
Is this the one with the breakdancing?
It is not. That's Psycho 5 Electric Boogaloo.
Ah, right. I should have known.
No, this was directed by Richard Franklin, who was a Hitchcock protege. It was written by Tom Holland, director of Fright Night.
There was a lot of hype, and there was also, I think, a lot of like, what are they going to do with this story? I'm not really ashamed to admit it because I was only 11 when Psycho 2 came out. I didn't see it in the theater, but I saw it shortly after on cable. But I saw Psycho 2 before I saw the original Psycho. I didn't see Psycho until much later in life, actually, the whole thing. Obviously, I knew the story. But yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I thought Psycho 2 was incredibly entertaining and way better than I think pretty much everyone expected that it was going to be, especially because of the time period. Like, again, 83, we've covered this a lot, but you are now deep into 80s slasher, almost getting, it's almost getting a little long in the tooth by 83. And so you've got a very specific type of horror movie, certainly inspired by Psycho originally, but like way removed. So what they were going to do with Psycho 2 is like kind of what we talked about with Jaws 3. Jaws being such an iconic film, Psycho being such an iconic film, Jaws 3 comes along and they really adapt a lot of the slasher tropes and just retrofit it to be a giant shark movie. Like, were they going to do that with Psycho 2? Like, was Psycho 2 going to be a product of its time, or was it going to try to be a spiritual sequel to the original? And by no means is it on par with Psycho, but as far as a follow-up goes, and as far as like a story following up something that is just so iconic.
Psycho comes out same year as Peeping Tom, two of those proto-slashers along with Black Christmas before Halloween, just like completely kills it at the box office and defines horror and slashers in 1978. 2 years later, you've got Halloween 2 that comes out, I want to say 1981, if I remember right. And I think I've heard interviews with John Carpenter talk about how movies like Scanners had been released and people like Cronenberg were starting to influence gore and effects and really taking it to the next level. And he felt like he had to kind of keep up with the slasher Joneses because the movie he made was relatively conservative. Now was the baseline. If they're going to have a 4 or 5 person body count of teenagers, well, we need an entire Camp Crystal Lake of dead teenagers. All right, well, now Freddy's got to do something. Well, we're going to have to kill Johnny Depp and just leave a big old blood stain on the ceiling because that's how you ramp it up. And that's all happening in those early to mid 80s, along with yet another Friday the 13th, yet more Halloween films. And then Psycho is right there being released. And to your point, it would have been so easy for it to only be a slasher because it was being released at a time when, all right, well, we're going to make Psycho, but we're going to make the Jason Voorhees version of Psycho. Mm-hmm. And there is some of that in the film, but it does have a bit of subtlety in the film where there is, like you said, that spiritual succession to the original in trying to deal with Norman Bates and that idea of like rehabilitation. And there's even stuff about like inherited evil, even though they kind of create a subplot where maybe his mom wasn't his mom. And there's stuff going on there that doesn't seem to be canon in the other films. It still doesn't take the easy way out of making it just a gore fest We don't need to be respectful to Hitchcock. Let's let it ride. Opposite, you get Jerry Goldsmith, who comes in and does the music, is respectful of the music, but also there's like a bit of a empathetic score because now you're looking at Norman Bates as like a tragic figure. Like he's been rehabilitated.
On the basis of the staff report, Norman Bates is judged restored to sanity and is ordered released forthwith.
What about his victims? Don't they have any say? Can you restore them?
Madam, please sit down. This matter is being represented by the district attorney.
Your Honor, my name is Mrs. Lila Loomis. I have a petition here signed by 743 people against Norman Bates' release, including the relatives of the 7 people he murdered. Doesn't that give me the right to speak out?
Has the district attorney advised Mrs. Loomis about her rights in this matter?
Yes, Your Honor. I explained that her petition had no effect on these proceedings.
Have you explained to her that this hearing is a matter of law and not a
Don't
motion?
you realize
Yes, Your
they're
Honor.
going to release a
Mrs.
homicidal
Loomis,
maniac?
I'm going to
out
ask
on
you
the
to
street?
sit down or I'll have the bailiff remove you from this courtroom.
Why bother? It's all too obvious. Our courts protect the criminals, not their victims.
Lila Crane, Vera Miles is back, and she's doing the same thing that, to be fair, most of us would do. Like, isn't he the actual psycho guy who killed a bunch of people and dressed up as his mom, and we don't need to understand it? He's just bad. And turns out all the townspeople, the people that he works with at the diner, his doctor, the sheriff, all of them are like, everyone deserves a second chance. And by the time you're like halfway through the movie, you know, I think Norman Bates deserves a second chance. And then when people start kind of messing with him and setting him up, it reminded me a lot of, I think it was in one of those behind the scenes for the original Psycho, where Hitchcock talks about how like he wanted to get the audience on Norman Bates' side during the scene where the car almost goes into the pond, and how there's that momentary pause because now you've just made the audience root for the killer because we all feel that anxiety. No. Now we don't want him to get caught. We want the car to go in the water. And there is a little bit of like understanding that that's a very powerful theme in Cycle 2.
Are you satisfied, Doctor? Turning a murderer loose on an innocent public?
Mrs. Loomis, Norman was not convicted of murder. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And since he is no longer
That is
insane,
just
he has as
legal
much of a
hocus
right to
pocus.
his own life
And when
as
he
you or I.
murders again, you will be directly responsible.
Well, what if this guy is rehabilitated? And what if there's actually just all these people that are unraveling his rehabilitation?
It's so interesting how, you know, Norman is really an incredibly sympathetic character. Everything points to the fact that he's been rehabilitated, extremely fragile, but also like trying really hard to just reintegrate into society. And there's some people, you know, in the town and characters that are like really invested in making sure that, you know, he gets that second chance, like you said. And then there's that mystery element of like, well, something's going on and maybe it's him, maybe it's he thinks that he's cured, but like he's split personality, whatever's going on, like something's happening because people are dying and he's starting to lose it again. The joy and I think the entertainment comes in seeing how that mystery reveals itself as the movie goes on. And then you get that little, and we won't spoil it. Usually we'll spoil old movies, but I feel like some of these like lesser remembered gems, if for anyone listening out there that hasn't seen it, we don't want to ruin the experience for it. But there's that little sting at the end. You just kind of find yourself rooting for him along the way, no matter all the twists and turns.
Myrna was talking about you at the diner today. Mrs. Spool kept on telling her to shush, but she wouldn't. She said you'd been locked up.
Did she say why? Well, I'll tell you. When I was 12, my mother went mad. So I put some poison in her tea, you know? I'm all right now.
You sure?
Sure. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given me a job in a diner, would they?
I don't know. It takes a nut to work there.
Cycle 3 and 4, where again, mileage varies on production value, but because of the consistency of Norman Bates, the character, the casting, Anthony Perkins, he obviously cares about this character. He returned even though they were considering recast him because they weren't sure he was going to come back. There's obviously a reverence he has for that character that he created that you see in all the films, especially in Cycle 2, 2 decades later after the original. Oh yeah, this man hasn't lost a step. If anything, I still, for whatever reason, care about this serial killer. And I'm actually kind of feel bad for him.
Didn't Anthony Perkins direct one of like 3 or 4, maybe?
He wanted to direct Psycho 4, but the studio was a bit apprehensive. So they went and got a journeyman director with a hell of a head of hair, Mick Garris, to direct Psycho 4. But from my understanding of Psycho 4 and 3 for that matter, it wasn't because he wasn't interested in the character. If anything, he just wanted to make sure that it didn't steer too far away into the world of like gory slashers, where he wanted to keep them within a certain pocket that was respectful to the original.